Hey everybody, Mary Fran Tempo here. And before we get started with this week's episode, did you know that Brilliantly Resilient can come directly to you? That's right, we have keynotes, programs, presentations, workshops, all available to companies, associations, conferences, and organizations, either virtually or live in person. So head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net at the speaking tab to find out more. And while you're there, you can also sign up for our weekly Brilliance Bit, which comes to you once a week directly to your inbox and has a bit of brilliance from this week's show and will keep you living in a brilliantly resilient mindset. Okay, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you going to live there or are you just visiting? Let's check in with Mary Fran and Kristen to learn how to come through not broken, but brilliant.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode, and perhaps I should say season of Brilliantly Resilient Live. I have taken a break for a while. I'm your host, Mary Fran Tempo. My Brilliantly Resilient founder, Kristen Smedley, is off doing all sorts of things. So this season, you got me. And I am going to continue to bring you really great guests and people who are going to talk about brilliance and resilience as it relates to them. And to that end, I have my buddy, I call her Jenny from the block, Jennifer Gardella, Dr. Jennifer Gardella. I'm going to give her due. Jen is a social media consultant with a thriving business in that arena, but she's also a domestic violence survivor and has recently published a book about that and speaks out on that. But we are going to embark on a conversation today that I think is near and dear to both of our hearts and hopefully will resonate with you all too. And it's kind of about boundaries. So Jenny from the block, thanks for coming on with me today.
Well, thanks so much for having me on. I am always honored to be here. It's some of the best work that I've ever done on video is with you guys. So,
well, I appreciate that. It's always great to have an intelligent person with whom to have a conversation, as Jen well knows. A few
get
minutes
real.
I was basically talking to a 4 and a 3-year-old and watching idiotic videos on television. So this is truly a step up for me. So you and I both had experiences recently where we were asked professionally to speak at some really nice events that would have been great for us to do if it had all worked out. But the kicker on both of those requests was that after people told us that they would love to have us and we said we would love to be there, we had the nerve to say, what is your speaker budget? And we were told a big fat nothing. So let's just talk about your experience recently and how that made you feel and where we go from here in business.
Yeah, it's such a great question, right? Because you and I, while I do float in this space of social media and blogging, I have done free speaking gigs in the past. I'm building a business, so I can get clients by speaking at organizations. And I've also gotten paid to speak at organizations about my expertise. The choice is mine, what I decide to do. I also tend to do free speaking gigs for organizations like SCORE that maybe help broad groups of people. And I've recently stepped into a more soft skills, emotional space, you would say, with the domestic violence speaking, which is where you've sat as well. And it's amazing to me how people have looked at me and said, well, you can't charge for this, which is unbelievable, or, well, this is an honorarium sort of experience for you. And I was like, you know what? My mortgage is not paid in exposures and honorariums. That sounds so rude at a base level, right? But as I push or look to push into large corporations, I'm working with a CEO mentor who told me right off the bat, you do not speak for free. Like if you want to, let's just say Aramark hires me, putting that out to the universe, that would be a great experience. And I trek into the city and I train their employees on what to look for with domestic violence and how to help survivors. And then I trek out, there goes my day. And who's to say that my day is worth nothing? I don't owe, and you know, a lot of people say, oh, you sound like an evil capitalist. Yes, yes, I do. And there is nothing worse than at the end of the day, having given your time and effort to an organization that is making money, and you yourself are not viewed as worthy to be paid. And that's a very important distinction, I think, that we have to make. And you and I have hit upon this at many conferences. The conference is making money. The people working the conference are making money, but they expect the speakers to show up for free because of no guarantee of exposure or making money. And while that's okay, you and I as speakers have the right to pick and choose where we do that. And that is what we recently both also hit up against, where if I'm giving of my time to an organization, it's my choice what organizations I do that for.
Right.
And so the only place I will speak for free in the domestic violence space is my domestic violence center.
Right. Well, and the other side of the coin is you can't you're paid nothing, but you're supposed to bring your A game. So, you know, the interesting thing about all that is, yeah, we really want you here. We know you're amazing. We want you to bring your A game, but we're not going to pay you for that. We're not going to pay you for your A game. So God forbid if you went in and just blew something off the cuff, you would be, you would be bullied,
Admonished. Right.
for not taking it seriously. And that's the issue. I think we have to decide when it's time to take ourselves seriously before anybody else will take us seriously. And to your
Right.
point about the speaking for free, yeah, you got to do that at the beginning, but you also have to know when to stop.
Right. You have to also get paid for your expertise. We pay for expertise. I didn't say to my, realtor, hey, we're not going to pay you. Like
Right.
it doesn't and it's funny also, Brene Brown, I don't remember all the specifics of where I heard her talk about this, but she was contacted by an organization that felt that she should be speaking for free. And her point was like, how dare you decide where I should be spending my time and how much I'm worth? And I will never forget, Mary Fran, this goes back years ago, but just popped into my mind when you and I were just starting out and our friendship was just starting out. And we were also, doing quite a bit of speaking. And I listened to a webinar that said, if you're not getting paid to speak, people don't even value the information you're bringing to the table. So
Right.
when you start to hit onto those $5,000 and $10,000 speaker levels, people respect you more if that's what you're charging. I have gotten paid that kind of money before. So why shouldn't everybody pay me that, except again for SCORE? Linda would kill me if I'm like, oh, by the way. But yeah, that's so important. You know your worth, you know your expertise, and you don't have to give it away for free. And
Yeah. And I think just to make this more relevant to the entire audience, this applies, we're talking about it from the speaker perspective, but this just applies across the board. I mean, on this show, we've had a number of entrepreneurs and people starting businesses who, especially if the business has some kind of a social tie-in,
Mhm.
where if God forbid, if you try to charge for a product, people are offended, that you're charging for something that has a social tie-in or has an element of good attached to it. But how are you supposed to continue that work if you don't have money to fund that work? We have to recognize that there comes a point at which, and you can have a hobby. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
You can have a hobby. You can have something that you love to do, but recognize it as that. That's fine. But
Well,
if I'm sorry,
it's
go
your
ahead, Jen.
choice. Your
Yeah,
hobby is your choice.
exactly.
No one
So,
can tell me that speaking is a hobby and has to happen around when they've already booked the speaking gig. That's the other thing. Well, we're doing this on this date at this time, and you need to show up here. And I'm like, really?
for free.
Right?
You need to
Will you
show
pay
up
my
here for
train ticket?
free and give us everything that you've created. And you know what? I think that's part of it too. As entrepreneurs, people who are entrepreneurs, a lot of time is spent in that creative space. And people generally don't value that time. But that's where all the product comes from, whether the product is an actual thing or whether the product is a program or whether the product is a speech, whatever it is. But you also deserve to be paid for the amount of time and energy that you put into those things. And again, it's a choice and it's a hard one to make because when you're first starting out, yeah, you got to do a lot of stuff for free that you don't want to do.
Sure.
So how do you know to that end when it's time to not do things for free? Or maybe another way of looking at the question is, can you still do things for free? And when?
So I think what you have to look at is, well, first of all, you have to take your power back and say, I get to choose. That's huge.
It is huge.
And there's some people with really good boundaries around these issues that you can look to, right? So you get to choose what you do for free and for not free. You get to choose what is going to be a good opportunity for your business. One thing that I despise is when someone says to me, this will be a great opportunity for you. And I literally say to them, either the room is going to be filled with people who can pay me $1,500 a month to do their social, or the room is going to be filled with people that have budgets to pay me $10,000 to speak and train their employees on domestic violence. If you can fill rooms like 100 people with that kind of, that kind of audience, I am all in. I'm going to put that on record. I will come to your event and speak for free. But if not, I'm out. And that's just the nature of it. I'm 10 years into my consultancy. I'm a whopping 4 months into this domestic violence thing. But one of the biggest problems I've had in my life is people pleasing. And when people approach me with opportunities to speak for exposure, I go through I don't want anyone else to get it. And I want this person on the phone to like me. And I want to be able to demonstrate my expertise because, as you know, I do think I'm the best. I should say I know I'm the best. Anyway, but I don't. And then I think, wait a minute. The person on the phone who's telling me they want me to speak for free doesn't value me. Right. Why the heck do I want to go to their event? And like I said before, the best is when it's part of their job. So they're going to be paid to be at the event. And I'm the schmuck that's speaking for free. Now, will I do it? Yes. I love to work with lawyers, bar association. That may be a good spot. And I've done those before. I may continue that too. SHRM, other human resource organizations that focus on HR directors, that may be great for me. But I make the choice. And for me, as someone who has been wrapped up in abuse for a very long time in her life, taking that power and saying, I make my own choices has been very powerful for me.
And that's how you do it. That's a huge way to look at it, because first of all, when you were speaking, I thought to myself, they would never say that to a man. They would never say, you have to come and speak for free. Like, we don't pay you. You should be honored to come and speak for us. They don't say that. Now, to your other point, if in fact you do decide to speak or do anything for free, you have to make sure there's some sort of a return for you. Either they put an article in their association newsletter that tells all of the things that you do and all of either they, pay for you to create a marketing piece that you put in their swag bags or whatever. There has to be some kind of a return for you, even if it's an organization that you value. There should still be something that you get out of it and are compensated for, in your efforts in some way or another. But to your point about the whole people pleasing thing, this is such a woman thing. Men don't care. And somebody says to a man, you have to, as you said, drive into the city, bring your A game, do your thing, get home, all this, and we're not going to pay you. They'd be like, no. Like that word. No, they wouldn't do it. So how do we recognize this idea of taking your power back has really caught my attention because it transfers to so many other places in life. How do we begin to do that?
I'll go first. My new tagline in my business is awareness and education lead to empowerment and growth. You have to be aware that you have a problem. Being paid to support another business that is making money is, in my opinion, a problem. Like I just said, your job is not to hawk your time for free so other people look good,
Did you
right?
ever hear that? Did you ever hear that expression? Well, when you put it that way, when you put it that way, it makes perfect and total sense.
Well, and let me just make fun of Mary Fran for a minute because she knows it's done with so much love. There was a time when I nailed her on being profit averse. She
We did.
was anti making money. And I was like, what business model are you following that you're worried
The
about not making?
Catholic one where you're not allowed to do anything without feeling copious amounts of guilt.
There you go. So, but you became aware. Now it's because I hit you over the head with it, but you became aware. And then you had to get some education behind you. Okay, what do other people being paid to speak? You talk to any of the big people that you see now, again, they pick and choose what they do, right? And it's their right. So the path to a big speaking gig maybe begin with a free one, whatever. But at the end of the day, the goal is to make money. Bill Gates does not wake up in the morning and say, oh my gosh, how many computers can I give away, or whatever the heck Microsoft does? How much can I give away for free? Apple does not wake up. The people at Apple, they wake up and say, we report to our shareholders and they need money. End of the line, right? So again, awareness, then you educate yourself. You find out, okay, what basket am I in? What can I charge? And then you empower yourself to say, oh my goodness, I am worthy. That's huge. So many of us, and I do speak from the perspective of my experience with domestic violence, but you're knocked down to feel unworthy for so long.
Yeah.
But so then you have to find that shred of I can empower myself and build on that. And then the growth will happen. And, I know most people don't believe me when I say this, I do go to the woohoo side of life. But when you dial in those pieces and you start to resonate on a level of I'm worthy for my expertise, you actually will present as someone who will get paid for their work. It's pretty amazing what happens. And I'll just share the story. Not when I first started out, I was about 5 years in, and someone booked a call with me. I'll always do a free 30-minute call with anybody who needs help. It's a sales call for me, but whatever. And she said, well, from what you're describing, blogging, Google business profile, Facebook posting, LinkedIn, sounds to me like that's worth about $50 a month.
Oh my goodness.
And I
Oh
was
my
like,
goodness.
you can't be rude to people. But I said, actually, at that point, it was a $500 or $1,000, whatever I was offering her. And she was like, you can't charge me that. I had another client who moved from the New York City area out to the Midwest. And he said, you can't charge me your New York City prices anymore. And I was like, actually, I can charge what I want. I can charge what I believe I'm worth. Your location does not dictate what I'm charged. Like, people get these things in their heads and they just want to desperately make you feel as if you're not worthy and you should be working for them for peanuts. And I've got enough of a circus going around in here. I don't need any more peanuts.
Well, and to that point, I have walked away from things that I thought would be a great opportunity in certain ways, but that also were not respecting the what I was bringing to the table here. And also, as you said, not respecting the fact that I got to choose because I do some things for free. I do them for organizations like the YWCA. I will do whatever the YWCA of Bucks County needs because I so believe in their work.
Right.
But as you said, that's my choice. Other people are trying to make those choices for you and also carrying some kind of knowledge about one thing onto another. Now, that's not their fault if they know that you do the one thing and they ask you to do another thing. But it is your prerogative then to say, I'm really sorry, I don't do that except for this particular organization.
Right.
So to this point then, first of all, I really like how you gave awareness, education, empowerment, and growth, because that's a strategy.
Mhm.
And that's what we need, as you know, what I needed desperately to make this something that seemed concrete to me, as opposed to this, well, you have to charge more money. Well, I don't know how to do that. This is a strategy, and it's one that you can implement in your business life, but also implement in your personal life. So
Yeah.
let's shift a little to that, because you had to do that. You had to do that personally. And I had to do that in very different circumstances.
Right. Yeah, I mean, setting boundaries in your business is great, but if you absolutely, especially if you're a small business owner, you absolutely need them in your personal life as well, because so much of the work bleeds together, right? It just all like meshes in there. To my point, I'm in my home office.
Yeah, me
So
too. Me
life
too.
is going on, the laundry, the dog, like life is going on. So where are those boundaries? And at the end of the day, we have the responsibility, and I just learned this recently, but you have the responsibility to, those you choose to live with, you have, I believe, a responsibility to support them in some sort of setting of your home, right? You take on a dog, you have the responsibility to care and walk and, exercise and play with the dog. But beyond that, you have the right to say to your partner or to your dog, this is how I'm spending my time. This is how my life is going to work. And I hope that we do this with our life, right? Where your boundaries and my boundaries kind of mesh to form this impenetrable force where we both know that we are completely supported in what we want to do, but we don't have to spend every minute together. And I don't have to okay what you're doing. Like that's a really important piece of it. I had to set boundaries with my kids, as are one of the support team members who carried me through the death of my first husband, John. Um, my kids only have me. And while I thought that the older they got, the less they would need me, which is sort of true, we had to set some pretty firm boundaries on when they could call me. Because if they had some hysterical crisis, usually that they created for themselves, as I always like to say, they would call me and I'd be like, I'm working. So I went to like a 9 to 5 schedule with my kids.
Yeah.
But I don't have young kids at home. Like you do sometimes have to work around their schedules,
Yeah.
but I have really firm boundaries on when I work. To that point, last night I was working till 10 o'clock at night.
So I think one of the things to take away from this too is that this is an evolving process. Always, always, always an evolving process, because life evolves.
Right.
And circumstances evolve, and where you are, whether it's in business or personally or whatever. So if you can keep in mind that awareness, educate yourself, and then the empowerment and growth come, keep that in the back of your mind all the time, and be willing to look at where you are fairly regularly.
And what's not working, what is
Right.
working and what is not working, right? So perfect example. And this is so basic, everyone will understand it because I know I tend to turn everything into a PhD dissertation for people. So I had a really big problem at the end of last year. Awareness, I have a problem. My calendar is a mess. So I couldn't keep track because I still had a paper calendar. And everyone would laugh at me and go, ah, Jen, you're so technologically like gifted. What's going on with this paper calendar? Awareness, education. I need to go on Google Calendar. But I empowered myself to do it. It took me about 6 months to get up and running. The growth that has helped me achieve just in organizing my day has been exponential.
So I think too, the answer, the point that brings up is, when we talk about change, that's a dirty word for most women. As I said in my book,
Someone wrote a
just
great
so
book
happened
about
to have the woman's book of dirty words right here, and that's one of them. Um, because when we construct our house of cards, and we'll try anything to keep it standing, even if it's not working, even if it needs to be changed and knocked down, we dread that idea because we don't know how that's going to affect other things. So the point is, they're not always monumental changes.
right.
It can be a relatively simplistic thing that you just go, hey, I can't do that anymore. And
Right.
you
And
don't, but it takes determination on your part too.
exactly. And what is John Satin and Chris Pate over at the Possibility Coaches taught me that if you take one small turn, if you move the ocean liner, I don't know how they drive those exactly, but like there's some like mechanism where you turn the wheel just a little bit, I would imagine, you can suddenly go from winding up in the Bahamas to winding up in Africa. And so that's the whole point. Now that can also go sideways. I mean, that may not be a good reason to wind up in Africa, but if you don't like if it's hot or whatever. But my point is that really set me on a very just switching to an online calendar was massively painful, right? But it had to be done, and it has led to a much more organized structure for me and my business, which has been phenomenal as it gets
So there
busier
is
and
that
busier.
there is that idea embedded in all of this, to not be married to an outcome. And that's one of the things that I talk about, as you know, in
Oh,
Brilliantly
yes.
Resilient. Don't be married to an outcome. When we continue to keep the same patterns, we know what the outcome is going to be. It's going to be the same as it's always been.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to like kind of take that leap of faith and go, okay. And that again, to bring this back full circle to what we were talking about, saying no to non-paid things, saying no to people who say your product or whatever should be given away for free, saying no to anything that doesn't meet your personal value system. That's another thing we talk about all the time. You have the right to choose what your value system is. And, bringing it all back to that, sometimes you have to take a leap that aligns with you, but you're not sure how it's going to align with everybody else. But you still have to be willing to do that. Like with your calendar, like, I don't know how this is going to go, but I got to do it. I got to try it.
Right.
In
And
its
don't
most
worry
simplistic.
about like you have to emotionally detach from the outcome, right?
Yes.
That's critical. But also don't plan out 50 steps. That's
Yes.
another thing I realized that I was I can write a beautiful plan. I mean, like I can map out every da, 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 da. I go back in my notes and I'm like, oh my gosh, as I was planning this, I was also getting absolutely freaking nothing done. So I always say
Oh,
now, come up with like one, maybe two or three things that you have to do in your plan to start to reach your goal. And then some magic is going to happen. As you start to work on whatever it is in a constructive way, the universe, again, the woohoo in me will tell you that the universe is going to meet you somewhere and possibly take you somewhere else. But you just have to be ready. But if all you do is sit around and plan and educate yourself, as someone who has way too much education in her backpack there, but if all you do is worry about the education of it, or do I know enough, you will never know enough to complete a project. At the end of the day, there's always another course you can take.
there has to be an action step, and there has to be that instituting the action step and then seeing what happens. Because as I said, I can't believe you're talking about this, because I say this all the time when we talk about the brilliantly resilient stuff, and that model and the whole 15-minute master and all of that. When you institute an action step and you put it out into the world, there's that one huge variable, and it's other stuff.
Right.
Which could
Yeah.
be other people, other circumstances, other opportunities. You don't know what that other stuff is going to be. So to your point, planning the minutiae of anything is pointless. It's just pointless.
Right. Like, next week, my business is certified by WeBank. I'm going to their national conference. And there's a bunch of different ways to prepare for the conference. And what they tell you is, okay, register for all the company portals for all the people that you're going to meet. Make sure you know who the DEI officer is going to be on site. Make sure you know what the company does. There's like 200 companies that are there.
Yeah.
And first of all, I think it's irresponsible to tell any small business owner to do that level of research on their own. Because as you know, someone that I talk to about my business all the time, that really stressed me out. And I said, wait a minute. I'm going in with the hopes of like doing XYZ. Those are my goals for the conference. But I'm not blowing out this huge plan until I really understand what's going on here. And I get to determine that. And I also get to live with the result of at the end of it. Right. So if I then do meet people who are like, oh, are you registered for our portal? And they won't talk to me because I'm not registered. Guess what I'm going home to do?
Right, exactly.
Oh,
You have to
okay.
be willing to step into those situations. And again, not completely unprepared,
Right.
but the thing that you most have to prepare is your own pitch, idea of who you are, of what you do, and of what you can offer someone. That's what you have to be mostly prepared, and with what you value yourself as.
And
So,
you hit up that with that all the time in business. I sat around tables just the other day at one of these pitch type events with the big companies, and I listened to all this unauthentic pitching going on. And I'm like, okay, stop. Who are you really?
mm-hmm,
Like, do you really come across as someone that wants to help? Or do you sit there and say, and I would really like to talk to you further about this. When can we schedule a call in front of all these other people? I'm like, they don't want to schedule a call with you. Did you notice they didn't take your information? They don't have anything for you.
right, right. So I want to bring this. I mean, this is a topic that we could explore the offshoots of till forever. But I want to bring this back and just come up with some maybe generalities
Sure.
for anyone who is either in business in any way, shape, or form, because this applies across the board, and then personally, because we got into the boundaries a little bit with people and with the people in your life and all that, but know that these apply across the board. So can you give me a couple of summation points about knowing your worth, creating boundaries, and enacting that in a strategic way in life?
Yeah. So, first, you have to be ready to acknowledge that things are not working.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not
That's not
saying
easy.
that's fun. We know these people, right? You and I have, God, we've met a lot of these people who are like, oh my gosh, everything in my life has always been fantastic. Guess what? It's not. Like, you're not fooling Mary Fran and I. You may fool a whole bunch of other people, but we are well beyond that. But you have to acknowledge, at least to yourself, you don't need a megaphone on your roof, just you, your journal, and your higher power. Okay, what's really not working in my life?
Mm-hmm.
And it may be your relationship with your spouse, it may be something in your business, it may, whatever it is. What is it? That's the awareness piece. And then what do you need to do in your personal life? Is it a boundary issue? Is it you don't know enough about the topic? Like, again, that education, like, where is the problem coming from? And dig
The
down.
root, the root of the
Yeah,
problem. That's another thing I talk about. The root, not the
roots.
offshoots, the
And
root.
so you can get to that by continually asking yourself why.
Yeah.
Why? And you give me an answer. Okay, why again? Or what do you really want? Or there's a whole bunch of other steps, a whole bunch of questions. If why is the trigger for you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So educate yourself and then empower yourself to actually make a change, because you do have 150% complete control over your life. No one is making you sit where you are at there. And all the choices that you've made have led to where you're sitting. And here's the thing, when people want to tell me, no, I'm not responsible for this, I have to be here, I just look at them and I say, you need to take your power back. You have the power to move, right? So you have to realize that you can empower yourself and then get ready for the growth. But like, strap in, like, make sure that your life is ready, because I have done this before and ping, your life just takes off. And we watched that with me last year, because a lot happened that we were not expecting. I did not plan about 90% of what has happened to me in the last 18 months.
And within that, first of all, again, let's go back to the awareness, education, empowerment, and growth. Those four steps are amazing. But within that, for your journey and mine as well, because, my journey with David, with his addiction issues and everything, I had no idea what to do about all that. And then to try to build a business and all that in the middle of everything, it was just a complete and utter train wreck. But there were a lot of very tentative steps within there. Even when you are taking your power back, it's still a process. You're not going to feel like Wonder Woman,
Well,
2 seconds after you make the decision.
and what's going to happen? People in your life who depend on you for where you are sitting. It's usually in a lower status place than they are, or you're the one that always jumps up to help them. They get radically upset when you start to set these boundaries. Sorry, I can't do that speaking gig for free again this year because XYZ. Or I'm sorry, I can't deliver your textbooks to school that you forgot. And
Right.
your kid, and we won't get into the parenting aspect of that. I think that's the best thing you do for your children, by the way.
Oh, it's totally.
But, you know, that those are some like you're gonna get some pushback. Well, wait a
Mhm.
minute. You always do exactly what I say, and now you're not. You've changed. Damn straight I have.
And it's about flipping
Freaking
time.
time. Right. And, like I always say in my primary relationship with my partner, like we set ourselves up from the beginning with some really strong boundaries around our lives, and it was my girls and what we had just been through, escaping domestic violence, their father dying. I parent in specific ways. With Jim, he has a child in a wheelchair. Like he has a lot that goes on in his life as well. So it was kind of like, here's what I'm bringing to the table, and here's the type of partner I need. And if you don't want to be that type of partner, we can part ways now. I'm good. But we were very specific. So if you weren't that specific and you want to stay with the current people in your life, I would recommend micro adjustments, because most people are not that bright. Most people are very focused on themselves, and most people really won't even understand what you're doing. But don't like start screaming at your kids, which I mean, we've all done before. I
Mhm.
don't like this going on. And we need boundaries. They'll be like, sounds like a personal problem. Go work on your, like, you need to go work on yourself, but make small micro adjustments, right?
Mhm.
Hey, we'll use my youngest, Stephanie. Hey, Stephanie, can you clear the table with me? She may be like, what the hell is going on here? But small adjustments, like,
Yeah.
hey, I have a meeting or I want to get something done and I don't have time.
Yeah.
Small.
And make it a cooperative effort. People at some point, especially with kids and even people you're working with and all that, they need to understand this is a group thing. And unless if it's not a group thing, and if I'm in charge, then I'm in charge, which means I get to tell you that you need to help me. So, there has to be that realization and that awareness. Um,
Right.
this has been a fascinating conversation, one that you and I have had privately, but what I really wanted to bring to the Brilliantly Resilient audience, because so much of what we do, as women, as entrepreneurs, as everything, is about figuring out where we stop giving ourselves away.
And it stops at, you got to take care of yourself. We
Mhm.
all are all, here's another thing that women go through. Oh my gosh, I don't like bubble baths. I don't, self-care is a bunch of bubble baths and manicures. And I always hold up my hands like, do you see a manicure on these fingers? Like I take excellent care of myself now first. Didn't when I was living in abuse, but that also wasn't working for me. So if I need a timeout, if I need space to myself to do whatever it is that I want to do, I take it without hesitation. And I demand that those who are in my life need to respect that. And
Beautiful.
and again, I don't, start screaming at people, but I'm like, yeah, this is my time.
And be able to walk away. If somebody doesn't like it, you just go, I'm sorry, I got to do my thing now. You do what you want, but I'm not doing that for you. So I got to
And they
go.
probably won't even remember why they got mad at you. I mean, again,
Exactly.
people are so damn focused on themselves
Right.
that they don't even realize, like, oh, wait, why am I mad at you? So that's a big piece of it as well.
Okay, so there you have it, everybody. This is about boundaries. It's about awareness, education, which lead to empowerment and growth. Implement boundaries, take micro actions, but own who you are, own what you want, because ultimately it is your responsibility to make those steps for yourself, to become who you are, to pay what you're worth, all of those, all to be paid for what you're worth, and all of those things. So, Jenny from the block, Dr. Jennifer Gardella, tell everybody where they can learn more about you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. So my main website, jennifergardella.com, houses all of my information about my domestic violence speaking, which you will have to pay me for. And then it also has links to thegardellagroup.com, which is a site in transition, but there's information there on how to get in touch with me as well if you need help with blogging, social media, and just understanding and developing a digital marketing strategy.
And to all of you out there who are looking for a domestic violence speaker, I've been through this journey with Jenny and I have heard her speak. She is phenomenal on this topic. So consider that if you are looking for someone, what do you want to pay for? Because she's worth every penny. And if you are looking for some more insights and motivation, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net. You will see a pop-up where you can sign up for our email, which will bring you a brilliance bit as we post these podcasts. to help you live your brilliantly resilient life. Thanks, everybody. See you next time on Brilliantly Resilient Live. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.